We now have the transcripts. We have the actual typed back and forth questioning and answers from David's preliminary hearing. You know, reporting can only get you so far, so we're going to review what we've learned, including the alleged messages between David and...
We now have the transcripts, the actual typed back and forth questioning and answers from David's preliminary hearing. That statement from a legal broadcast isn't just an update. It's the key to a locked room. And inside that room, according to the state, is the digital confession of a 21-year-old musician accused of murdering a 14-year-old girl, dismembering her body, and hiding her remains in a Tesla at a...
So, law and crime and sidebar specifically have been all over the David case since the very beginning, when it was first announced that a decomposed, dismembered body was found in a Tesla.
Hollywood towyard. Think of a phone sitting on a table in an evidence room. The screen is cracked. The battery is dead. But on that phone, scrolled all the way to the bottom of the message thread, is a text that was never deleted. It's a text that changes everything. That phone is the story. The messages are the crime scene. Before we go deeper into what the documents actually show, make sure you're subscribed to Crime Files 911, because we don't just cover the story, we follow the evidence. The phone already knew. The last time we discussed this case, we knew the decomposed, dismembered body had been found. We knew David Anthony Burke.
David, 21-year-old musician, who prosecutors allege met teen Celeste Rivas Hernandez and began engaging in a sexual relationship with her. They claim this began when she was just 13 years old and he was 18. They claim that he brought her to this home in the Hollywood Hills after calling an Uber for her on April 23rd, 2025, and that he stabbed her to death after she allegedly threatened to expose him, presumably about their relationship. And he is accused of dismembering her. Her remains were found in an impound lot in a Tesla, allegedly registered to him back in September. And after a multi-day preliminary hearing, a judge has now ruled there is enough evidence for him to stand trial on charges of first-degree murder with special circumstances, continuous sexual abuse.
The 21-year-old singer-songwriter had been charged, but the details were sealed behind a courtroom door where no cameras were allowed, no audio was recorded, no reporting could capture every word. Now, we have the full court transcripts from that 5-day preliminary hearing, and we are learning things we didn't know before. We are getting details we didn't have. This is where it all stands. David, prosecutors allege, met teen Celeste Rivas Hernandez and began engaging in a sexual relationship with her when she was just 13 years old and he was 18. They claim he brought her to his home in the Hollywood Hills after calling an Uber for her on April 23, 2025, and that he stabbed her to death after she threatened to expose him, presumably about their illegal relationship. He is accused of dismembering her. Her remains were found in an impound lot in a Tesla allegedly registered to him. After that multi-day preliminary hearing, a judge has now ruled there is enough evidence for him to stand trial on charges of first-degree murder with special circumstances, continuous sexual abuse of a child under 14, and unlawful mutilation of human remains. He has pleaded not guilty. The phone already knew. That phrase captures the central betrayal of this case, because before the murder, before the dismemberment, before the body was stuffed into the front trunk of a Tesla and covered with air fresheners to mask the smell of decomposition, there were text messages. And those messages, now read into the public record, tell a story that the defense will try to tear apart and the prosecution will use to build a coffin. Let's look at the first piece of hard evidence. Day one of the preliminary hearing covered early police investigations after Celeste was reported missing, David's alleged purchases on Amazon under an apparent alias, and the discovery of the Tesla. Officer Joshua Byers with LAPD's Robbery Homicide Division testified about the condition of the remains.
The graphic photos were presented in court. To give you an idea as we go through the transcript, here is testimony from Joshua Byers, an officer with LAPD's Robbery Homicide Unit. Quote, question, and the photograph on the right? The tattoo on her right index finger, the sh with SHHH and dot, was on the right hand index finger. Okay, based on the condition of the decedent as she was removed from the front trunk of the Tesla, was there a face where you could make out any facial features? No. There was quite a bit of decomposition to where the skin slippage and made it unrecognizable. The court asked, meaning the judge, I'm going to go ahead, stop you there, Miss Silverman.
When asked if there was a face where you could make out any facial features, he responded, no, there was quite a bit of decomposition to where the skin slippage made it unrecognizable. That testimony was so graphic the judge called a recess, but the prosecution was just getting started. They called Benjamin Greger, the former director of finance at Mogul Vision Partners, to testify about David's music career. Greger testified that David earned...
Now, DA Beth Silverman asked Greger about David's earnings from things like albums and merchandising. Quote, question, how much money did the defendant generate between 2023 and 2025? Answer, I would say he's roughly earned close to $10 to $11.5 million in gross earnings. That's important because you can see we're talking about a huge amount of money here, possibly bolstering, supporting the prosecution.
Roughly $10 to $11.5 million in earnings between 2020 and 25. That's important because it bolsters the prosecution's claim that David killed Celeste because he was worried about the impact she could have on his reputation, his business, his career. And then came the property transfers.
Circumstances that involve paying bills. And we reported early on in the case that David had apparently transferred properties from his name to his mother's name. This is from the transcript. Quote, question, and why did you tell her she should move the properties from under the defendant's name since they were his homes purchased with his money to her and her name? Answer, the understanding was the Hempstead house was for the family, so we moved title. Do you remember testifying that the reason that you told her to do that was to protect the estate from any civil suit so the victim's family wouldn't be able to obtain those or get access to that money? I do recall, yes.
That David's mother, Colleen, was in charge of parts of his finances, and that she had moved properties from David's name to her name. When asked if the reason was to protect the estate from any civil suit so the victim's family wouldn't be able to obtain access to that money, Gredger answered, I do recall, yes. So the argument from the prosecution is this: why would you transfer properties if you weren't worried about a judgment against you? And why would you be worried about a judgment unless you committed the crime? Day 2 got even more specific. The prosecution called Louis Porro, a senior vice president of finance who testified that David was
strong suit. Poimeru, a senior vice president of finance for Interscope Capital UMG, was called by the prosecution. Question. And so for the EP and 2 albums, what was the total amount that was paid out to the defendant? Answer. The total that was
paid out $5.12 million for his albums and EPs. Then came the grittier pieces of evidence. Variety criminalist Chelsea Mario was called to the stand to discuss processing the Tesla.
And she was the one who processed that Tesla Model X, apparently that contained Celeste's remains. So from the transcript, quote, I gathered some of the air fresheners that I found throughout the vehicle for a single photo. There were at least 11 throughout the vehicle. Question, and where were they within the vehicle? Majority of them were in the center console. They were also in the rear seats, and there were also some in the front area, meaning like the front trunk. So there were actually air fresheners in the front trunk area? Yes. Mario continues, quote, the top middle is a picture inside of the frunk, and it shows the insect activity and an air freshener. Anytime you talk about insect activity, gives you kind of stages, decomposition, how long the body might have been in there. Okay, and in terms of insect activity, are we talking about things like maggots? Yes. Flies? Dead flies? Yes, okay. In the photograph just below in the center where I see there is a red circle, what is it that you've circled here? That is another...
She testified about the air fresheners found throughout the vehicle, at least 11 of them. Some in the center console, some in the rear seats, and some in the front area, the front trunk where Celeste's remains were found. She described insect activity maggots, flies, dead flies. In one photograph, an air freshener was circled beneath the maggots. The question is obvious. If you're trying to prove this is David's car and that he knew what was in it, why would you fill it with air fresheners unless you were trying to mask the smell of decomposition? And if you didn't know what was in the car, why would you need to mask anything? Day 3 is where the autopsy details emerge. LA County Deputy Medical Examiner Dr. Bran Ho testified that Celeste's death was a homicide caused by 2 penetrating wounds. He also went into detail about the dismemberment, noting that it was possible a power tool like a chainsaw had been used. Remember, 2 chainsaws were found in David's garage. A third was missing. But because of the severe level of decomposition, it was difficult to pinpoint an exact time of death or dismemberment. That's a gap the defense will exploit. But it's also a gap that the text messages will try to fill. Day 4 is where the narrative pivots. That's when Detective Corey Fell took the stand to break down the digital evidence. And this is where the parallel narrative begins. The detective testified that David's lock screen was apparently a photo of him and Celeste in an embrace with neither wearing any clothing on the top half of their bodies. He described text messages that discussed past and future sexual liaisons, sexual positioning, their relationship, and how and when they could meet up. He had the unenviable task of describing photos and videos of David and Celeste in various sexual positions, images considered child sexual abuse.
Very important, but I will tell you, very unenviable task of describing photos and videos allegedly of David and Celeste, or the 2 of them, together in various sexual positions or images. Because the images are considered child sexual abuse material, CSAM, they weren't shown to the public, and instead the detective gave a play-by-play of what he was seeing. Based on electronic records, investigators learned that David and Celeste, that apparently met online, began communicating when she was just 11. They reportedly or allegedly had sexual intercourse or relations for the first time when she was 13 and he was 18.
Material that could not be shown to the public. Based on electronic records, investigators learned they began communicating when she was just 11 years old. They reportedly had sexual intercourse for the first time when she was 13 and he was 18, and there was a lot of concern in the messaging that she could become pregnant. Now, here is a specific example from the transcript. The prosecution questioned the detective about a text exchange regarding
currently, and then a misspelling of the word manifesting, my period because I refuse to have kids, correct? Correct. And then a response from the defendant that says what? Did you miss your date? Okay. And at the top of the next page, same date, 11:25, 10:16 p.m., what does the defendant say to the victim? He says, you should start tracking. And what about at the text right beneath that? He sends a second message that says, use flow. Do you know what that refers to? I believe it is a telephone application for women to track their period. He says, I know that's why you should start tracking. And then just beneath that, what does he tell her? And now that it's ovulation week for you, it's important. And then on the following page, let's jump down to this text here at 10:18 p.m. What does he tell her? I just need to make sure you're on top of your... And is there a response from the victim? Yes. What does she say? She said, if I'm pregnant, though, I'm not having it. Now, how old is the victim at this time? She had just turned 13 years old 2 months prior. Question by Ms. Silverman. How old is the defendant at the time of those text messages regarding pregnancy and this pregnancy tracker app in November of 2023 when the victim is 13?
a pregnancy tracker app. The victim texted David about manifesting her period because she refused to have kids. David responded, "What? Did you miss your date?" He told her to use a period tracking app and said, "Know that it's ovulation week for you, it's important." He said, "I just need to make sure you're on top of your..." And Celeste responded, "If I'm pregnant though, I'm not having it." At this time, she had just turned 13. He was 18. The messages then discussed a pregnancy and an apparent abortion. Celeste said, "It's okay though. Don't worry. Neither of us are capable of watching and taking care of the baby. It's for the best." David responded, "Yeah, I know." He asked her, "When you going to get it done?" She said, 2 days. And then David sent a chilling message. "Also, my mother always told me to ask this question if I ever was in this situation. It's not insinuating anything, so don't get offended, please. But it is mine, right?" Celeste responded, "Of course, it's yours, David." The phone already knew. The evidence of the sexual relationship is overwhelming, but the prosecution needs more. They need motive. The text messages also refer to something they called Operation Awesome, or OA, which was apparently their name for her leaving her family and coming to live with him. There was a man named Sheldon hired as personal security for David, and he was apparently aware of this secret plot. Celeste's messages made it seem like she was nervous or hesitant, but David pushed her. On February 14th, he texted her, "So explain me what you want to do. I tell Sheldon, stop at stop sign and you make multiple trips to car." She responded, "No." And then, "Hell no," she said. "Just tell him to stop." And then David asked, "So how are you going to carry heavy bag?" She responded, "It's not going to be heavy if it's that small." He responded, "Nah, you're supposed to use the duffel along with whatever you were packing." The text messages varied from vulgar to disturbing. There was an abortion gift discussion.
I'll quote, he says, "I'm thinking about your abortion gift." And what does she say? She says, "I want Balenciaga hourglass purse." Later that same day in the evening hours around 5:17 p.m., does she send another message to the defendant? Yes. What does she say? She says, "You ever just think we have whole A sex tape?" And what is his response? He says, "Few of them, yup." And then what does she say with respect to that? With respect to that sex tape? She says, "Is no leak it, please." And what does he say? He said, N-word, and the word is capitalized, you, and the rest is lowercase.
Where Celeste wanted a Balenciaga purse, there was a mention of a sex tape where Celeste said, "Don't leak it, please." David responded, "Don't leak it." But here is the ticking clock moment that reframes this story as a thriller. In the final messages, Celeste made threats. She said she would kill David, that she would strangle him, that she would tell her dad lies about him, that she would end his career. The prosecution argues that this gave him a reason to kill her. On the night of...
It says gate open, door unlocked. This is at 10:10 p.m. and 38 seconds? Correct. About 20 minutes later at 10:31 and 3 seconds, does the defendant send another message to her? Yes. And what does he say? He says, "Uber said you're here. Where are you at?" And at 10:33, does he send another message? Yes. What is that? Hello? And at 10:36, does he send another message? Yes. What is that? Bro. And then what? Celeste. At this point, are there no more messages from the victim ever? No. Then at 10:58 p.m., does he send another message to the victim? Yes, it says, what is that? It says, bro, blocking me? And beneath that same time, hello? And then at 11:37 p.m., does he send another message to the victim? Yes. And what's that? Bro. And at 11:41 p.m., does he send another one? Yes. He sends a message that says, I'ma call Jen, bro.
Text stop. At 10:10 p.m., David texted, gate open, door unlocked. At 10:31, he texted, Uber said you're here. Where are you at? At 10:36, bro. At 10:58, bro. Then, hello. At 11:37, bro. At 11:41, I'ma call Jen. Bro, you're scaring me. After that, no more messages from Celeste, ever. The prosecution claims these are alibi texts designed to make it look like he didn't know where she was, that she never arrived. But if she never arrived, why the air fresheners? Why the body in the trunk? The rhetorical question is this: when an 18-year-old texts a 13-year-old about period tracking and abortion, and then that 13-year-old's dismembered body is found in his car, how many text messages does it take to prove that he knew exactly what he was doing? Now, the defense made a motion to dismiss. They argued there was not enough evidence to move forward. They pointed out that the prosecution had circumstantial evidence of concealment, not evidence of a killing. They argued the special circumstances like lying in wait, killing for financial gain, and murder of a witness didn't fit. They argued that Celeste demanded to come over, that David tried to convince her otherwise, that she never threatened to go to the police, only to expose him socially. The defense called the prosecution's theory of financial gain too attenuated. But the prosecution's rebuttal was sharp. They argued, we're talking about a victim who has been stabbed twice. I can't understand how anybody would believe that you wouldn't notice that. There would have been some vocalization. And during that time, the defendant doesn't call 911. He doesn't call law enforcement. He doesn't do anything to try to save her life. There's nothing about this case that sounds like an accident. The judge agreed and held David to answer on all charges. The unanswered question remains. If the prosecution has all this digital evidence, all these texts, all these photos, all this financial motive, why is the defense still fighting? The answer is the gaps. No murder weapon has been found. The exact cause of death is complicated by decomposition. There is no surveillance footage of Celeste entering the house. The defense will argue that the circumstantial evidence is just that, circumstantial. They will argue that David panicked after something else happened. But the prosecution has a powerful narrative. They have the messages. They have the body. They have the air fresheners. And they have a jury that will be asked to look at a 21-year-old man and see a predator who murdered a child to protect his career. The phone already knew. The call to research is this: go to the Los Angeles County Superior Court Public Records portal and pull the full preliminary hearing transcripts from the David Burke case. Read the testimony of Detective Corey Fell. Then ask yourself one question. When a 13-year-old girl sends a message that says, if I'm pregnant though, I'm not having it, and the 18-year-old man on the other end replies with, I just need to make sure you're on top of your. What exactly did he need to make sure of? The gap between a child's fear and an adult's calculation is the entire tragedy. We are following the evidence here at Crime Files 9 and 11. If you want to see the moment the courtroom doors open for the trial and the full truth starts to bleed out, you need to be watching. Like, share, subscribe, and turn on notifications right now. Because when the phone is unlocked, we will be the ones reading the messages.